after high school, I believe it or not, I saw a commercial on TV with Tom Smothers.
Oh, this is Fred. Freddie the Brain.
Hi, Tommy.
Hey, are there really good jobs for kids without 4 years of college?
Yes, as technicians, look, you'll see openings in engineering, chemistry, electronics, research.
How do you find out about these jobs?
By sending for this free booklet, Write Careers, Washington, D.C.
What's that address again? Because my brother, he's looking for work.
Careers, Washington, D.C.
So I attended a electronics school in Boston called RETS. It was a technical school. It wasn't, a college or anything like that. So I moved to Boston and, got a job at a supermarket, just to live off of while I was going to this school, which was thankfully paid through a loan that I received from a local bank in Ware, Mass. And I quickly understood that, at this particular school, even if you didn't get high marks, as long as you showed up, and did the work in any capacity, you would pass and get a certification. So that was my plan, was to just show up, through hell or high water, and I managed to do that rather. It was a course that lasted like a year and a half, and went through all these different phases of electronics, tube theory, solid state. We built a radio, we built a TV, we did things like that. Finally, the computer part of of this year and a half course came up, and it was really about a little bit of math and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. In the base 2, number system. As Americans would know, there's the base 10 system. You count to 10, and everything else, kind of follows. Well, in the base 2 system, it was 0 and 1. I thought, well, I can handle 0 and 1. And so I sort of excelled, in computer theory. And, from there, I was recruited by the Digital Equipment Computer Company to come work at their plant in Woburn, Massachusetts. And this was huge for me, because there I was, earning, I don't know, maybe $80 a week, and living in a single room, to actually getting a job making like $12,000 a year, a weekly paycheck of, $150, or $180, and I could now, live in a room, in a very, a different place other than the city of Boston. So that was a big step, I just thought, wow, this is great. And I would go to work and I would troubleshoot computers, basically. So a year after working at Digital, roughly a year, I was poached, if you would, to work for another company where I was promised more pay, and it happened. I worked for a computer company in Burlington, Massachusetts, that specialized in troubleshooting digital equipment computers, which is where I came from. So I basically got a raise, and I thought, wow, this is great, and so I worked there for a few years, and I did many things. I was a technician, troubleshooter, and I made my way up to software engineer, hardware engineer to software engineer, at this particular company. It was a very fun time, if you were to be in a computer company. So there was money to be made for a 20-year-old like me, and for entertainment I would go into Boston either to listen to music, or or just in general, just kind of go to cafes and bars, and meet people and socialize, that sort of thing. So throughout my 20s, there was that, and I worked at a few other places too. One in particular where I was kind of like the technical assistant to the CEO, which is again a better paying job, and also it was kind of a lofty in the sense that I was traveling in jets all over the country, just chasing these CEOs and setting up their technology, and so that they can do presentations in front of other important people. And it was a good job, and like I said, I got to travel. I visited probably every major city in the country, and and just experienced life. I lived in a lot of different cities in the Boston area. Boston, Brookline, Medford, Somerville. You name it. I probably lived there. All North Shore. And I moved a lot. Let's put it that way, for all kinds of different reasons. But Boston, was always a fun town. I also like to hang around in Cambridge, which was of course kind of a fun kind of place. It wasn't so intense as Boston. It was just kind of like a real big suburb. And through my association and living in a community house at the time, got associated with some Harvard students who predominantly lived in this community house because they didn't want to live on campus. They weren't freshmen, they were secondary schools. So as time went on and I got to know them, we had mutual interest in music and all this other stuff. And by this time, I was kind of a lousy bass player, singer, in this band, on the North Shore of Boston. And we weren't all that bad. I mean, I'm in total, I was pretty bad, in doing my job. But in meeting these Harvard guys, my whole musical, journey kind of, took a turn, because, they were into kind of like conceptual art and music that, really didn't have any, rhythm or melody, which probably made, things sound like noise. But, the thing was, I actually got involved in this, and we called ourselves Trash Art. We were just kind of this small group that, did all kinds of things. We would perform on the streets of Cambridge, in Harvard Square. So at that point, my typical day was, get up for work at about 6. Go to work. After work, go to Harvard Square, do my street performing, and then from there, go into the studio. And somewhere in between all of that, I got my meals in. So it was kind of a fun time. I thought, I was, I'm not just this kind of lousy bass player, in a band anymore. I'm kind of really, opening up my, I don't know what you want to call it, but opening up something. So it was a very interesting time, in that sense, because, in a sense, like we were calling ourselves artists, and all that stuff, and there was a certain amount of people who liked it. I mean, I guess at our height, our trash art height, we started to tour, the East Coast, and up until the point that we played at the National Gallery for an evening, as a artistic avant-garde group. And of course, the being the arts and everything like that, it was accepted. We had recorded an album at this point, called Barrel of Monkeys, which I'm sure you can find in any 50-cent bin, in any secondhand vinyl store. And so we were somewhat established, and like any band in their 20s, it was kind of dysfunctional, and we had no management, and oftentimes it was a struggle between us. At around the same time, I became involved in what would be a TV and motion pictures, that sort of thing, within the Woburn area, and so what this included was like I said, doing TV commercials, and doing predominantly science fiction movies and stuff. Productions that some of them got finished, some of them didn't get finished, because our budget, wasn't really big, and we would have to kind of do it, after hours, if you would. One particular movie that came out of it, that has been sustained even today, was a movie called Winter Peace, and I would say that you should first look it up, in a search on the web, and you will find a lot of reviews and content, and even on YouTube, I believe, you can watch the entire movie. It was a bit of the movie was a bit of a murder mystery, science fi thing with a stop motion, claymation stuff, and that was a story about people going missing on a mountain, and sort of a resort mountain. And what ended up was there was this winter beast, animal, part monster, part whatever, that was killing these people. So as time went on, it took years to make, and then finally it was put together, as a movie, and it caught on. And like fire, a brush fire, in a field, because it was classified as a movie that was, believe it or not, so fun to watch, because it was actually kind of really schlocky, really, maybe even hard to watch. So in some of the reviews, people would say, that they just love to, like drink beers, smoke a joint, and watch this movie. And others would say, this is the best movie to watch your friends watch, because they just don't understand what's going on. And even to this day, you can buy it on Blu-ray. And you can also, Google search that. So it was really, kind of a fun, project, and to this day, it still lives.